Hey, it's Emma Chamberlain. I designed these new glasses for Warby Parker and I basically can't take them off. Like, I'm showering in them and sleeping in them. They're just that good. Go see them all at warbyparker.com. And you know what? Have a good day too. Okay? All right? Bye.
Money decisions don't have to be either or. With Bank of America, they can be yes and. Like yes to sunny vacations and rainy day funds. Can our digital tools and guidance help you create the future you want? Yes. And help you keep enjoying today too. Do more with a bank that asks, what would you like the power to do? Explore our tips and more at bankofamerica.com/yes and.
Three. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Royalist King CJ Music Podcast, where we talk music, pop culture, and all of that. So please, let's have some fun. Let's discuss. Okay, so there's a few things I want to truly discuss in this conversation, but there's one topic I need to address. Right, and this is this one conversation because if I don't address it here, it'll never be addressed publicly, and I don't know. It's a weird issue to me, and so when I talk about a weird issue, this is what I'm going to be referring to, and this is this conversation of hip hop. And so let me open the conversation. Let me open the floor with this conversation. This conversation is about the effects that hip hop says, hey, in order to be one of the greats, you have to do this. If you don't do this, you're not one of the greats. However, at that same time, hip hop constantly says that hip hop is this way and not that way. It's been an interesting year, right? It's interesting, right? And so this year in hip hop, because hip hop will say that and I mean hip hop will essentially say that you're not supposed to talk about hip hop, or you're not supposed to criticize hip hop. You're supposed to talk about hip hop and be really one sided of, oh, if you lose to a rap beef, then you're not supposed to like sue for arguments and argument's sake, right? And all of this conversation, because I kept hearing this and I knew it was gonna happen, but apparently the rest of the world didn't, and I don't understand this, because people said if it's not true, he should sue. Drake sues defamation, basically saying that you promoted a song that allegedly claims that I did these acts, which I did not, which in some case has lost me money. Which people are saying that's not hip hop because you lost a beef. You lost a beef, so therefore you should not open this conversation. If you've seen the clip, you've seen it circling. This episode has been in the works for a little bit. So this is the thing. People have said for years, and people said it after the beef. They said, well, if you're not one, why didn't you sue? Why doesn't Drake sue? If this isn't true, why doesn't Drake sue? And so it was interesting to me because, as I said, and I've talked to a lot of people that had this same stance, and they were like, you were right. The question becomes, why are you essentially, why are you suing a label for a battle that you lost, for the defamation lawsuit? But I think we'd come to this. People were like, you don't sue because you lost a rap battle. You don't sue why you lost a rap battle. However, and we were talking about this, and a lot of friends were talking about it. Allegedly, Kendrick was a wife beater, and also Drake was a known pedophile, right? PDFile, right? It's interesting to me though, because they're like, if you should sue if it's not true. And I was talking to a lot of people that study the law, and they were like, there's no evidence. At one point, there were articles, right? There were you can find tweets and stuff that say they both artists did this, and so this was my concern. My concern was somebody was gonna get hit with a defamation lawsuit. However, I didn't see them hitting somebody with a defamation lawsuit this late in the game. However, we got the defamation lawsuit, right? And this is the thing. And people are like, that's not hip hop. The thing about hip hop is hip hop's always been legal. There's a current case, right? The Great versus Universal Music Group, and I think that's over like Drake and Kanye's song "Glow." That it was on. Whose album was it on? Like the issue is, I think it's either going to be dismissed. I think the case is going to be dismissed. But there's a case that was September 12th, 2024. I remember right. It was against Universal Music Group, and I assume the song was infringement. Like these songs are like allegedly similar to like a copyrighted song, right? That had been published in 2012 as a demo, but then Kanye and Drake did it later. What was it? Later in 2022, right? Like it was the issue becomes, when was the song registered? Because you have to register the song, you have to get it cleared and all of this before you can release it. And the song is called "Glow" that Kanye and Drake did. However, they were being sued for it, but I think that song was released by Kanye and Drake. What? Defendant released it in 2017. Drake had it on one of his albums. Yeah, like that's like people are saying that people have not sued record labels or anything for hip hop before. The problem is music groups have always been charged, not directly for defamation, but like infringement. Drake was part of it at one point. We've had people part of lawsuits in hip hop. Now the argument is no one's ever heard of some of these like lawsuits, but these lawsuits are clear, right? Because there is, I believe there's someone, if I'm not wrong, there was someone that sued. Was it Universal Music Group and Drake? Who was it? It was somebody. Oh my god. It was somebody, right? Right, because it was copyright infringement, but I can't remember what the case was. But there was a reason that this happened. It was a lawsuit. I remember it was a lawsuit because it was Leaky versus Timberland was the cited by the prosecutor. Oh my god, I remember this case where they were. I think it was an infringement claim, but I don't remember what the infringement claim was about. But it was something. It was something related to. Was it Wu-Tang? I think it was a Wu-Tang member. But if I remember the case right, it was Shabazz. Was it Valentine versus Aubrey Graham, Lucius Grain, and Universal Music Group as the defendants? This case would have happened February 14th, 2024. Not sponsored. But my thing is, people are like, this has never happened in hip hop. It's happened. I cited a few. Now I don't remember the exact legality of the case, but they were suing for a song that was put out, right? And they were suing for they were arguing in civil suits. So I don't understand why people in hip hop are like, oh, no one's ever sued in hip hop. They have. Kanye, Drake have been part of it. Universal Music Group has been part of it. So allegedly, he's suing them for defamation. And there's, and this is the thing. people have sued for defamation of character before in hip hop. They've also sued for other acts in hip hop. Now, I cited too that word 2024, 2023, I believe. No, it was about what, 2022 to 2023. Yeah. These are recent cases that have been filed. The reason is, though, people are saying that he's never sued. But when you ask people, they're like, I would have sued if somebody called me this and it wasn't true because that's defamation of character without evidence to back it up in the law. And the conversation would become, the idea of who holds a burden of proof in a defamation lawsuit. A lot of things come out. But I think it's over this girl. I think the legal age of consent is like 16. I think she might have been 17, allegedly, right? I'm not entirely sure. But this is the conversation around that album. It's around that girl, but there's also like actors going back and forward, like having conversation with other actors, which actors have stated publicly on record that they have talked to younger actors to like push them in the right direction. I don't know his connection with Millie Bobby Brown, so I can't speak on that. I genuinely cannot speak on that. But this, like, I don't understand. Y'all, the audience was like, "Oh, if I was Drake, I would sue for defamation," because that's not true. Drake was out defamation. I don't know. It's interesting and okay. So let's talk about the alleged lawsuit that I feel some kind of way about, and I mean we could talk about it. Allegedly, for all of these, like the legal aspect of it is all gonna be allegedly. They're going to court. They're going to court essentially for an album. Well, essentially, Drake. He sues for defamation. He sues for something else. It's not defamation of character. It's interesting, right? And he also says that Spotify boosted like streams, which I mean, if he can prove it in the numbers, I think you're great. I don't know. I mean, I've heard a few instances where people were like, I asked for a certain song and I would get Not Like Us, even though Not Like Us is in the lyrics. And so it's interesting because Not Like Us is in a lot of lyrics of a lot of songs. So, it would play them Not Like Us. And that could be kind of popularity thing because I don't understand. I don't understand this. We'll talk. I'll talk hip hop for like a good 30 minutes and then I'll switch to the next topic. But like this is I don't understand it because they're like, oh, if he was really hip, if he was part of the culture, he would understand it's not right to sue. But I'm like, I don't get that, right? Because a lot of people, especially in that hip hop culture, that are like, I'm this because you're a guest, because you're not this, and this, and this, and this, and we're playing this by this, right? It's weird to me because not everyone fits that standard of, oh, I'm this, so I'm this because I've done this, so this is where I should be. A lot of people don't fit into that category. So for y'all to go and say, oh, well, if you're not this, you're not part of the culture, you're more of a guest in the culture. And I mean, that's fine, but the issue remains that this is that y'all say he's not part of the culture because nobody in the culture would do that. The issue with that, though, is when he goes and sues, because a lot of people said they would go sue if they were him, that conversation goes out the window. Because you're saying he's really showing his side, but the issue is if he's showing his side and he's had hip hop for 15 years, like you said, 15 years of dominance. You ask people, they say, yeah, hip hop. Drake was at some point very popular in hip hop. That is great. But just because he does a lawsuit, because no one else has heard, like was it Valentine versus Aubrey Graham? People have sued Drake for hip hop music. So for y'all to say, oh, he doesn't deserve, like, he's not part of hip hop because hip hop would never sue, music-wise and handle it in the court. A lot of artists have settled things in the court. Cash Money was settled in the court. A lot of people was settled in the court. We just seen Thug Shout settled in the court, right? We this is not a thing that hip hop's like, oh, we've never seen it. If you've never seen it, that's fine. But hip hop has been handled in courts before because hip hop is a business, right? If we haven't heard Killer Mike's album where he talks about profiting off of hip hop, then we're not having this conversation, or truthful, not this conversation about hip hop. But at that same time, if he's not part of the culture, my question is this then. Why is he being held to that same culture? Because Tekashi 69 was part of the culture until people hated him, then he was not part of the culture. And that's fine. You can hate a person and do that and say what you want. Right? I don't want anybody to hate another artist, and that's fine. But you have to understand, when most of the diss tracks aimed at Drake say the same exact thing, it becomes like a criticism of hip hop. People want hip hop a certain way, and we've seen that on Kendrick's G and X. And we could talk about that and have a truthful conversation about that while we go into this hip hop thing, right? But the problem is, we'll get rap purists that say it's supposed to be this way. We'll get people that listen to music that say, no, it's supposed to be this way. And then we end up in this we end up in like the realm of who's a functionalist, who's a structuralist, and who's like, we'll get into this whole conversation where we end up trying to figure out what's that baseline, what's that understanding. Because a lot of people like hip hop. A lot of people do. Like that's essentially what it is. A lot of people like hip hop. A lot of people have different backgrounds in hip hop. However, every time I've heard somebody talk about Kendrick Lamar, every time I heard somebody talk about the beef, the issue is he's a white guy. He's Caucasian. I don't know why this is the issue. Why you push this in rap? Like, the issue is, if you think you can out rap him, that's fine. But let's stop leaning on that color, right? Let's be real. Let's stop leaning on that, right? Because we're just falling back into this line of, oh, if you have this much percentage of African American or this of the black diaspora in you, then you're this, right? And we end up in the same conversation in which we're not getting anywhere. We're having the same conversation every couple of years. And I know, I sound heated, and let me be fair, I'm not. I just think having the same kind of repeated conversation years and years and years after hip hop sounds crazy to me. Because everyone likes hip hop. They just don't like a certain kind of hip hop because they're not that person. So we have to be fair and we have to be transparent when we go, cool, the reason you're not part of the culture and the reason you're not part of this is because you're this. Great. But then we have to be fair and say that that's the reason we don't like this artist. And that's cool. Because this other conversation is, and we'll get into it, because if it's not the hip hop that people like, we have this issue. Because we're into this issue before. Jay-Z, the death of autotune was targeted at T-Pain. And said, oh, you're not doing real hip hop. And when you want to do real hip hop, we want to hear 808. But the issue is, when people like the 808, they don't like the traditional 808. So this is the conversation we keep having years and years and years and years and years after. Because people keep going and saying, oh, well, I've never seen somebody in hip hop. I'll link 3 cases below. Right? Where defendants were a lot of different people. But let's be transparent here. Let's call biases biases. It's weird to me, right? It's weird to me, and I know I seem argumentative and I seem energized. It's just because I'm not sure what the conversation is here anymore. Because it's like, we can have a truthful conversation, but let's have it. Where people are like, oh, well, Tyler, the Creator, isn't part of hip hop. The West won't claim Tyler. He released this awesome album. People hate it because it's not religious. but then people are referring to Kendrick as like a Jesus of rap, and it's like that's not extreme. But because people like Tyler the Creator, Kanye West, Chance the Rapper, a lot of different people that aren't technically that traditional 808 and heart that roll in 808. They've changed 808. T-Pain, right? These people have done amazing things for rap. But if we start singling people out because of color, my God, rap is gonna change. There's a lot of artists that made it off of R&B music. A lot of artists that made it off of R&B music. That, I mean, if Drake's not part of the culture, what's French Montana? Like what are we doing here? Like, we're making it. Are we trying to make it pro like black diaspora, or are we trying, like, what are we doing here, right? Because even sometimes Afro beats don't like hip hop. So, like, what does this put hip hop on, right? Like, this is the conversation we need to have. It's interesting to me because you'll hear people say, "Oh, I'm a rap purist, I believe this," but then they're like, "Oh, Drake not part of that." But Drake has done so much for hip hop. Thug has even said they should do music together. Him and Future should fix the conversation, right? And they should like fix their differences and make music again for Atlanta. But if he's not part of hip hop, why do hip hop artists or why do rap artists love going to Drake? I just have a genuine question. But at that same time, though, people are like, I love GNX. I mean, it is a cool album. It's great. But the consensus that I'm hearing in real life is that if it wasn't like related to Drake, it's cool. It's an okay album, but they're looking for shots at Drake, which, I mean, and that's fair. I mean, I was cool with them. I like that. The album's okay, right? It's weird though, because the other side of this flip coin that I'm hearing about GNX is that it's not heavy conscious rap. But like, if we get the conscious rap, like Lil Sims, Stormzy, J. Cole, Black Thought, KRS-One, Big Kane, we get artists that like will tell you deep stories and really keep conscious rap. But like, everyone says conscious rap is too heavy. And then you go and say, we want real rap. But that's what Drake was doing. But now that Drake's out because of the culture doesn't like Drake, we get Kendrick to fill his place. But Kendrick isn't filling the place for a lot of people. Because a lot of people hate his voice, hate the 80, hate the boom, they hate the 808. The 808 for a lot of people. That's why when they flipped it in the 2000s, a lot of people liked music in the 2000s because the 808 flipped. Right, the 808 was more creative. It wasn't just boom. It wasn't a typical 808. And that's, I mean, like, even Jay-Z said it goes pit pat, right? It goes like you would hear, like it goes pit pat. It's nice, but it's a tough listen for a lot of people because a lot of people don't like the 808. But does that not make them part of the culture because they don't like the 808? Because it seems that hip hop is like, if you don't kind of like represent my view of hip hop, you're not hip hop. And it's weird to me because we've had this conversation before. We've had it with Michael Jackson. We had it with Prince. We had it with Drake. We've had it with Eminem. We had it with NF, which makes Drake music. We made it with Hopkins. We've had this conversation with so many artists, but the conversation is, oh, they make too much conscious rap, and conscious rap is hard. And I'm like, the Act 2 is conscious rap from Jay Electronica and Jay-Z, but it's not a heavy album. But to a lot of people, it can be considered really heavy. It's weird to me because it's conscious rap is too heavy, but it's also, we don't want pop. We want something light, but we don't want something too heavy like conscious rap. So what do we want? Pop? Popular music in a rap form, which Drake gave us. So it's it's weird to me. I'm having this conversation, but it's like you wanted him. You said if, and a lot of people were like, if it's not true, I would sue. Or he doesn't want to sue for defamation because a lot of stuff will come out. He sues for defamation and y'all are surprised. I don't get this because it's. I mean, people have lawyers for a reason. I do too, but people have lawyers for a reason, and if they're not used for illegal situations, then what are they there for? Especially if people keep them on retainer. I'm not sure what your situation was with lawyers, but like that's what I'm saying. At that same time, though, let's have a conversation, right? Because y'all are saying this, and this is my other issue with rap, and we'll get into it. But it's this Tyler the Creator. Tyler the Creator currently released an album I enjoy. Um, like I don't feel no way about it. Um, like I don't feel no way about the album at all. I think it's a great album. But people are like, oh, if you're not emo, if you're not African American or you're not from the Black diaspora, you're not listening to Tyler the Creator because he doesn't he isn't for he isn't for hip hop. And I'm like, I don't understand this. Because Tyler the Creator, from what I know, has a history in the West, right? But this is the album that you guys decide to get him on. But he gets a lot of Southern artists. He does. He gets a lot of Southern artists for this album. But is that because he can't go to the West because no one's ever accepted him of being the person he's creating? Because that's truly the difference between these two albums. GNX seems like a popular album. It's not for, it's not a complexual album. It's not an album where, let me find it. It's not an album in which you're gonna go, you know what? I think this part of this information was amazing. It's not like, hey, it's not like Tyler the Creator's album, and I like both albums. I do. I just like Tyler the Creator more because it's like you kind of like understand why he has that mask on, right? Because he's trying to keep himself out of this situation. I've heard Wayne rap on that. I like that. I like Gorilla rap on that. I like I forget her name, but she's on TDE. There's so many people on that album. There's Schoolboy Q's on that album, right? There's a lot of people on that Tyler Creator album. And he went to certain people for that album because I think originally it wasn't supposed to have any features. And so with not having any features, it was one. I loved that album. I do. I like that album. That album's in rotation because it's an interesting album. It really is an interesting album. You have Daniel Caesar on that album as an R&B artist, so people are getting love from that album. You have a lot of people on that album. You have a lot of lyricists on that album. You have so many people on that album where it's truly a mixture of album. It's an album where you get creative and you go, hey, what do I want on this? You get so many people. You get Sexy Red. You get Schoolboy Q. You get Lola Young. And let me, I love her verse. Right, I love like some of these verses. I do love. You get Solange on this album. You get a lot of people on this album that worked with this album, and it's one of like the most conceptual albums I've ever heard. It is one of those albums where each song is different. It may be not what you believe, but it's a very flippable album. It's something where I'm still listening to it because it's so deep dived into a different type of culture, and it makes a lot of people feel seen that aren't typically seen, right? But at that same time, though, you have a Kendrick album where most of the concept is homage. And a lot of people didn't take it as homage, but a lot of it's kind of homage that a lot of people missed on their first playthrough. So listening to it 3-4 times because they're like, oh, I missed that was even homage. And I'm like, oh, okay. All right. Oh, okay. So you missed that LA sign that was going in certain ways because, okay. And a lot of people said that they've liked it. A lot of people haven't really made a public statement about it. So it's interesting to me that we're having this conversation because I don't necessarily know. And I think, I mean, I've heard people say it's a tough album to listen to because it's not their cup of tea. Right? I've heard that about also Tyler the Creator's album. I've heard that about the Cube album that came out. I like Cube's album. I like the West. I do. But the issue is they're not letting of years have not let Tyler the Creator get that credit because people have said he's not this kind of artist. So he goes to a bunch of Southern artists to make an amazing album. It's one of the greatest. It's one of his greatest albums. I like Igor. I also like this though. I do. And I am a young Tyler the Creator fan, but I'm still listening to this. It's still in circle. Like Sticky's still in here. A lot of songs are still in rotation. At first, the introduction song is still in rotation. There's a lot that's still in rotation on these albums I'm listening to. Well, DNX, a lot of people like I was expecting a diss at Drake. We got an answer from Wayne's camp, that he was ready to make a diss track. And I'll say this, and I'll probably never say it again. Wayne is great at making songs. His mixtapes are one of the best. Even Jay-Z has acknowledged on the death of autotune. Said maybe I'll slip it to Wayne, mixtape Wayne, because Wayne is one of the best mixtape artists I've ever heard. Put a mixtape together, one of the best. If you go get drama, go get Wayne. You got a mixtape and that lighter flick, you got it. It's one of the best. It is one of the best collaborations I've ever heard. But like we have to be transparent here. We just can't sit here and go, nah, I don't necessarily agree with that. Like it's like them DJ Drama. Yeah, it's one of those dedication things. It's so much fun. You can hear it. It's weird though to me because people are like, in that line of him saying, I let Wayne down. My hard work let Wayne down. Which is a flip, I think, to like that Jay's, what I think it's that J. Cole and Nas flip where he goes, I heard I let Nas down. And it hurt me, right? And it hurt me. I let Nas. And they had allegedly they had a conversation. When I read the article, when it first came up, it said they allegedly had a conversation. So that's always my story. That flip that Kendrick does was for them to have a conversation, and so we had that conversation. At that same time, though, what I'm hearing is a lot of people said that he went in the booth to make a diss track, and they don't want to hear it. Wayne isn't the strongest diss track artist, but you get him on a mixtape. You get Wayne on a mixtape, he will show you how a song's supposed to go. Yeah. And I know that people are like, no, this is a hate Kendrick. It's not. It's really not. I just have issues with certain things. The second issue I have is he says don't let black he said don't let white comedians talk about black women. And people are like, this is that shit. It's towards shits and gigs. Great podcast. It is a podcast with a bunch of guys that talk about certain issues that are in the UK. But also like they're having fun and games and stuff like that. And I enjoy those episodes. But I think this is the thing. People are like, well, he made a joke about certain things that was out of touch, and that's who they think it is. It's weird to me though because I think like it's weird, especially that conversation. It's weird to have though because it's like I understand that this is what we're supposed to do. I understand that that's what people are supposed to do. You're supposed to protect women and children. I get that concept of it. The question though is I don't necessarily know. You get in a room with people and you get in weird conversation. You get in conversations with people. A lot of people are a lot shyer than people think, especially in the podcast room. A lot of people are shy. So to go and say, hey, you were sitting in that room, you should have said something. A lot of people are like, I probably shouldn't, right? There are things that I just probably shouldn't say. And they're just not saying them, which I entirely understand, right? I entirely understand. There's certain environments that if I were in currently dealing with certain situations, there would be a way that I wouldn't handle it. Right? Like I don't nervously laugh at conversations. I'm more okay. I won't say anything here. But like these are conversations that need to be had, and I don't know, it's weird. But no, when the song came out though, I personally was thinking of like a Gary Allen special where he was talking about his family, and I'm not like disrespecting his family by any means. I just that's what my mind to when he was making a joke. Like I wasn't that line like it. I thought it was a stray at like a couple people, but I wasn't sure who it's directed at because it's like it's weird though. That album is weird. Um, it's like it's not the best album to me. It's just not. It's never gonna be Kendrick's best album to me. But it's not. I don't know. It's weird to me though because like we've had these conversations. We're like, well, I don't understand why they didn't say anything. Because if I was in that room, I would have stood up and said something. And I'm like, I don't know, right? Uh, I genuinely, I genuinely do not know if I was in that room if I would say anything. Um, so there's that. At the same time, though, I do know that I do tend to speak out in certain situations where people don't speak out. But that I don't know, that's interesting, right? And as I said, it's gonna be difficult to defend though because hip hop in itself has uh treated certain women bad in their songs because they don't necessarily call women by their names in certain songs. And this isn't me defending like any comedian that makes jokes about black women. It's not. It's just the double flip of that coin is though people have said stuff about had lyrics in hip hop that aren't the best towards women. Like it's just a genuine fact. So it's like, are we gonna sit here and look at the confirmation bias, or are we just gonna have an unbiased conversation? And I don't necessarily know if we will have an unbiased conversation because, but if anybody wants to have that unbiased conversation, I do invite you to the show. Send me an email. We can have an honest, unbiased conversation. We can have a conversation. I won't cut you off. You won't cut me off. We'll just have a discussion. We'll just have a discussion. I might work myself into a co-host, but yeah, an honest conversation where we just kind of talk. I think that's probably the larger aspect of that conversation because that's not a conversation you just have by yourself. And maybe I'll bring a guest on and we have that conversation. Um, it's interesting to me because these conversations have always been something I want to have a conversation about. But I've never really gotten like the events, agreements, and stuff like that to get stuff done. But like I don't know, it's interesting because I'll never go and say, "Yo, they didn't say this about this and this and this," right? And it's weird to me because I've had this conversation before with people and they're like, "I'm not necessarily sure why you want to have these conversations." But I want to have these conversations because they're genuine conversations.
This is what you do when you've just found that statement handbag on eBay and you want to build an entire wardrobe around it. You start selling to keep buying. Yep, on eBay. Over that all-black everything phase? List it and buy all the color. Feeling more vintage than ever? It's out with the new and in with the pre-loved. Next thing you know, you've refreshed your wardrobe basically without spending a dime. Yeah, eBay, the place to buy and sell new, pre-loved, vintage, and rare fashion.
We have one more act for you this evening. I don't even need to say his name. Mr. Bob Dylan.
From the director of Walk the Line and Ford vs. Ferrari.
If anyone is going to hold your attention on stage, you have to kind of be a freak.
And starring Timothée Chalamet as Bob Dylan.
Are you a freak?
Hope so.
Once upon a time, you're just so fine.
Inspired by the true story.
I want to know which side he's on.
This Christmas.
They just want me singing Blowing in the Wind for the rest of my life.
Bobby, what do you want to be?
Whatever it is they don't want me to be.
He defied everyone.
Turn it down!
Play it loud!
To change everything.
He's our Elvis.
With no direction.
Timothée Chalamet, Edward Norton, Elle Fanning, Monica Barbaro.
Make some noise, BD. Track some mud on the carpet.
A complete unknown. Only in theaters Christmas Day. Rated R. Under 17, not admitted without parent.
I want to have the conversations because they're genuine conversations. Though with that all being said, though, I do wonder because we are shying of that like that hour long episode, and this probably won't be that long as episode. It is interesting. like, this is my recommendation. If you haven't heard Tyler the Creator, listen to it, because I'm not understanding why, a certain region has a problem with accepting Tyler the Creator, but then the moment he puts out an album, everyone supports it in there. But it's weird because this is his first album where a lot of people are supporting the album, and I'm not sure what's causing that support. With that all being said, I really do hope you enjoy this episode. I hope I didn't scare anybody off because they're like, "Oh my god, that looks crazy." Yeah, I do apologize, but also I want to have a genuine conversation about things. In order to have those genuine conversations, though, I need to be unbiased, which is interesting, right? It's very interesting. Though, with that being said, though, I do hope you enjoyed today's podcast episode where we talk about, everything really. We talked about hip hop as a stream, all dark, and a perk. Oh, you know what we're at it. So Melly may be getting home in 10 days, and that'll be interesting because when that comes out, I will be probably doing something. So him getting out will be perfect timing for a lot of different things that I'm doing. So you may hear a quick update from me. Go, hey, YW Melly is out because he's giving the prosecutor 10 more days to work on those situations. Which him being out would be interesting because that would mean that people aren't gonna use lyrics to prosecute people in in the States for music, which I think is interesting. You know what? I'm gonna do a little small episode where I kind of talk about research. But with that being said, though, I do hope you enjoy this podcast episode. I do hope you enjoy kind of season 3. It's been tough seasons. But this isn't season 3. With that all being said, though, I really do hope you enjoy this podcast episode. We're talking Kendrick Lamar, Drake, and much more legal actions. With that being said, though, I do hope you enjoy the rest of your day whenever you're listening to this. I do hope you enjoy. And with that being said, this has been your host, CJ, and I wish you all come back and watch another, or see, or listen to any other King CJ Music Podcast episode wherever you listen to podcasts. With that being said, though, I am on my way out. Goodbye.